At 2 in the morning, Lillian Hartwell walked out of a marriage that had died years before anyone noticed. Her husband had just confessed he never loved her, not once in 7 years, and instead of screaming, instead of breaking, she simply left. One trunk, one decision, and behind her, Victor Ashford stood in a house that suddenly felt like a tomb, realizing that some truths don't set you free, they bury you alive. If you want to see how far a man will fall before he learns to see what was always in front of him, stay with me. Watch this story unfold until the very end. Hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to know how far this tale travels. Because this isn't just about love lost. It's about what happens when you finally understand what you had, and whether it's too late to get it back. The clock in the hallway had stopped working 3 months ago. Victor noticed it now, at 2:47 in the morning, standing in the foyer with his hands still trembling and the front door wide open. Cold November air poured into the house like water filling a sinking ship. Lillian was gone, not dramatically, not with slammed doors or shattered china or the kind of screaming match that would have at least given him something to hold on to, something to fight against. She'd simply looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in what felt like years, and said, "I see." 2 words. That's all it took. Then she'd gone upstairs, packed a single trunk with methodical precision, and walked past him as if he were a piece of furniture she'd finally decided to leave behind. Victor closed the door. The sound echoed through rooms that suddenly felt too large, too empty, like a body with all its organs removed. He walked to the sitting room and poured himself a drink he didn't want, his mind still replaying the conversation that had ended everything. "Do you love me, Victor?" She'd asked it so quietly. They'd been in his study. She'd come in to tell him something about their daughter Margot's tutor, and he'd been distracted, irritated by the interruption. The question had come out of nowhere, cutting through his half-formed thoughts about a business contract. "What kind of question is that?" he'd said, not even looking up from his papers. "A simple one." Something in her voice made him look up then. Lillian stood by the door, still wearing her evening dress from dinner, pale blue silk that had probably cost a fortune, though he couldn't remember if he'd ever told her it suited her. Her dark hair was pinned up, a few strands loose around her face. She looked tired. How long had she looked tired? "It's late, Lillian." "That's not an answer. We've been married 7 years. We have a child together. What do you think?" She'd smiled then, but it was the saddest thing he'd ever seen. "I think you just answered." For heaven's sake. He'd stood, paper scattering. "What do you want me to say? That I love you? Fine. I love you. There. Are you satisfied?" "No," she said softly. "Because you're lying." The word hit him like a slap. "I'm not... Victor?" She stepped into the room, and he saw something in her eyes he'd never seen before. Not anger. Something worse. Clarity. "I'm not asking you to spare my feelings. I'm asking you to be honest. For once in our marriage, just be honest." He'd opened his mouth, closed it. The words that should have come, easy reassurances, practiced affection, stuck in his throat like broken glass. "I thought so," she said. "Lillian, wait. Tell me the truth." Her voice didn't shake. How was she so calm? "Do you love me? Have you ever loved me?" The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Victor felt something crumbling inside his chest, some wall he'd built so carefully that he'd forgotten it was there. "No," he heard himself say. "No, I don't think I have." She'd nodded once, as if he'd simply confirmed the weather. "Thank you." Then she'd turned and left, and 20 minutes later, she was packing. Now, sitting alone in a house that had never felt like home, not really, not the way other men talked about their homes. Victor drained his glass and poured another. The truth was supposed to set you free. That's what people said. But as he sat there surrounded by expensive furniture and heavy silence, Victor felt more trapped than he ever had in his life. Morning came without mercy. Victor hadn't slept. He'd sat in his study until the windows turned gray with dawn, trying to understand how 7 years had collapsed in a single conversation. Around 6, he heard footsteps in the hallway, quick, light steps that could only belong to one person. "Papa?" Margot appeared in the doorway, still in her nightgown, her blonde curls tangled from sleep. She was 6 years old and looked exactly like Lillian had at that age. If the portrait in the East Wing was accurate. "Where's Mama?" Victor's throat felt like sandpaper. "Your mother, she's away for a while." "Away where?" "Visiting relatives." It wasn't a lie, exactly. Lillian had family in the city, people she'd mentioned occasionally over the years. People Victor had never bothered to meet. Margot's face crumpled. But she didn't say goodbye. It was sudden. "Is she coming back?" Victor looked at his daughter, really looked at her, and saw the fear blooming in her eyes. The same fear he'd seen in Lillian's face last night, buried under all that terrible calm. "I don't know," he said, because he was apparently incapable of lying to the women in his life anymore. Margot burst into tears and ran from the room. The household fell apart slowly, then all at once. By the third day, Victor realized how little he actually knew about running an estate. Oh, he understood the finances, the business side of things. That was his domain. But the daily machinery of the house, the invisible choreography that kept everything functioning smoothly, that had been Lillian. "Mr. Ashford, we're nearly out of lamp oil," the housekeeper, Mrs. Davies, informed him on Thursday morning. "Then order more." "From which supplier, sir?" Mrs. Ashford always handled those arrangements. "Whichever one she used last time." Mrs. Davies looked uncomfortable. She kept those records in her personal ledger, "Sir," which she took with her. Victor felt a headache building behind his eyes. "Fine. Use your best judgment." "Very good, sir. And about Margot's birthday party next month? What about it?" Mrs. Ashford had been planning it for weeks. "The invitations haven't been sent. Shall I, just handle it, Mrs. Davies?" "Sir, I don't know which children were to be invited, or what theme Mrs. Ashford had chosen, or—" "Then ask Margot." Mrs. Davies' lips pressed into a thin line. "With respect, sir, Miss Margot has been crying in her room for 3 days. Perhaps this isn't the best time to burden her with party planning." Victor dismissed her with a wave he knew was too sharp, too desperate. When she left, he put his head in his hands and tried to remember the last time he'd actually paid attention to what happened in his own house. Nothing came to mind. But dates. The rumors started on Friday. Victor first heard them from his business partner, Thomas, who stopped by the house under the pretense of discussing a shipping contract. "Listen, old friend," Thomas said, accepting a whiskey despite the early hour, "I feel I should tell you what people are saying. People are always saying something. This is different." Thomas shifted in his chair. "There's talk about Lillian, about why she really left." Victor's hand tightened on his glass. "Go on. They're saying she was unfaithful, that you discovered it and threw her out." The whiskey turned sour in his mouth. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" Thomas leaned forward. "Victor, I'm on your side here. But you have to admit, a wife doesn't just leave in the middle of the night without reason. And Lillian was always so friendly with everyone. The merchants, the servants, even that artist fellow who did her portrait last year." "Stop." Victor stood abruptly. "Lillian has never been unfaithful, not once, not ever." "Then why did she leave?" "Because I told her I never loved her. Because in 7 years of marriage, I never once saw her as anything more than a competent manager of household affairs. Because she asked me a simple question and I couldn't even lie convincingly enough to keep her." "That's private," Victor said coldly. Thomas raised his hands in surrender. Of course. Of course. I'm just saying, you might want to control the narrative before it controls you. Make a statement. Let people know the truth." After Thomas left, Victor sat alone in his study and realized he had no idea what the truth even was anymore. Quiet. That night he went to Margot's room. She was already in bed, her nurse sitting beside her with a book. The woman stood when Victor entered, curtsying quickly. "Leave us," he said. When they were alone, Victor pulled a chair to his daughter's bedside. Margot watched him with eyes too old for her face. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Sad." "I know." "When is Mama coming home?" Victor looked at his hands. He'd never been good at talking to Margot. That had been Lillian's job too, hadn't it? The bedtime stories, the scraped knees, the questions about why the sky was blue or where babies came from. He'd been too busy, always too busy, building a fortune that suddenly felt completely meaningless. I don't know if she is, he said finally. Margot's lower lip trembled. Did you have a fight? Something like that. Did you say sorry? It's complicated. Mama says sorry isn't hard if you mean it. Victor felt something crack in his chest. Your mother is right. Then why don't you say it? Because I don't know if sorry is enough. Because I don't know how to apologize for 7 years of not paying attention. Because I'm not even sure what I'm apologizing for. Failing to love her or failing to realize I should have? Go to sleep, he said instead, kissing her forehead. Everything will be all right. Well, but as he closed her door and walked back down the dark hallway, he knew he'd just told his second lie of the day. The letter arrived on Saturday. It was delivered by hand, addressed in Lillian's neat script. Victor's hand shook as he opened it. Victor, I have taken residence with my sister in the city. Please do not attempt to contact me yet. I need time to think. Regarding the rumors I'm certain have already started, I will not defend myself against them. Say what you need to say to protect your reputation. I won't contradict it. I'm aware this may seem strange, but I have my reasons. You need not understand them. Tell Margot I love her. Tell her every day. L. Victor read it 3 times, trying to find something between the lines. Some hint of emotion, of anger, of hurt. Anything that might give him a foothold, a way to respond. There was nothing. Just calm, practical sentences that could have been written by a stranger. Sir? He looked up. Mrs. Davies stood in the doorway, wringing her hands. What is it? It's Margot, sir. She's developed a fever. The doctor arrived within the hour, a stern-faced man named Henderson, who'd been treating the Ashford family for years. It's not serious yet, he said, emerging from Margot's room, but it could become so. She needs rest, fluids, and someone with her constantly. Children can take a turn very quickly. I'll hire a nurse. She already has a nurse. What she needs is her mother. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Her mother isn't here, Victor said flatly. Then perhaps you should fetch her. Henderson's expression was unreadable. A sick child shouldn't be without her mother, Mr. Ashford. Whatever disagreements you and your wife may have, surely they can be set aside for Margot's sake. After the doctor left, Victor stood outside Margot's door, listening to her feverish murmuring. The nurse was reading to her, some story about a princess in a tower. Lillian's voice would have been better, he thought. Lillian had always known which stories to tell, which voices to use for which characters. Lillian had known everything, it seemed. Everything, except whether her own husband loved her. He went to his study and wrote a telegram. Margot ill. Stop. Doctor says not serious yet, but needs mother. Stop. Please come. Stop. B. The response came 2 hours later. On my way. Stop. L. She arrived just after midnight, appearing in the foyer like a ghost in a dark traveling coat, her face pale but composed. Where is she? Lillian asked, not looking at him. Upstairs, second room on the right. She moved past him without another word, taking the stairs 2 at a time. Victor followed at a distance, watching as she swept into Margot's room and immediately went to the bedside. Mama! Margot's voice was weak but filled with relief. I'm here, darling. I'm here. Eat. Lillian pressed her hand to Margot's forehead, then turned to the nurse. How long has the fever been this high? Since this evening, ma'am. Get me cool water and clean cloths, and send for doctor. Henderson, if the fever hasn't broken by dawn. The nurse scurried out. Lillian sat on the edge of the bed, stroking Margot's hair with a gentleness that made Victor's chest ache. You came back, Margot whispered. Of course I did. You need me. Papa said you might not. Lillian's hand paused for just a moment. Did he? He said everything would be all right, though. Then I'm sure it will be. Victor stood in the doorway, feeling like an intruder in his own house. Lillian hadn't looked at him once since entering the room. It was as if he didn't exist. "I'll leave you to it," he said quietly. "That would be best." He retreated to his study, but sleep was impossible. Every hour he found himself walking past Margot's room, listening to Lillian's soft voice reading stories or singing lullabies. Around 3 in the morning, he heard Margot cry out, and he rushed to the door just in time to see Lillian lifting their daughter into her arms, rocking her gently. "Shh, darling, just a bad dream. Mama's here." "Don't leave again," Margot sobbed into her shoulder. "Please don't leave." Lillian closed her eyes, and for the first time, Victor saw a crack in her composure. "I'm here now. That's what matters. Promise you won't go." Margot, "Promise." "I promise I will always come when you need me," Lillian said carefully. "Always, no matter what." It wasn't the promise Margot had asked for, but the child was too feverish to notice the distinction. Victor turned away and walked back to his study, the echo of his daughter's desperate plea following him down the dark hallway. By morning, the fever had broken. Dr. Henderson examined Margot and declared her on the mend, though he insisted on bed rest for at least a week. Lillian nodded, taking notes on what foods to give her, what signs to watch for. "Mrs. Ashford," Henderson said as he prepared to leave, "I'm glad you're back. The child was quite distressed without you." "I'm only here until she's well," Lillian said quietly. The doctor's eyebrows rose, but he said nothing. After he left, Victor found Lillian in the kitchen, speaking with the cook about preparing broth. "We need to talk," he said. "About Margot's care? I've already discussed it with... about us." She finally looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw a weariness in her eyes that went bone deep. "There is no us, Victor. You made that abundantly clear." "I was." He struggled for words. "I wasn't thinking clearly. The question caught me off guard." "The question," she repeated slowly, "of whether you love your own wife caught you off guard." "Yes." "No, Lillian, you have to understand. I understand perfectly." Her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "For 7 years, I've been a convenience to you, a competent household manager, a presentable wife for social occasions, a mother for your child, but I have never been a person to you. Not really. That's not true." "Isn't it?" She crossed her arms. "Tell me, Victor, when is my birthday?" He opened his mouth, closed it. "What's my favorite color?" Silence. "What was I studying before we married? What did I want to do with my life?" "Lillian, you don't know." She said it without accusation, just flat statement of fact. "You don't know any of it, because you've never asked. In 7 years, you have never once asked me about myself, about who I am beyond what I do for you." "I've been busy building our future." "No." The word cracked like a whip. "You've been busy building your future. I've just been there, a useful fixture, like the furniture or the china." "That's not fair." "Fair?" For the first time, real anger flashed across her face. "You want to talk about fair? I have spent 7 years trying to be the perfect wife. I've run your household flawlessly. I've raised your daughter. I've smiled at your business associates and laughed at their terrible jokes, and never once complained about the fact that you speak to them with more warmth than you've ever shown me. And the one time I ask you for honesty, for just a moment of real truth between us, you can't even give me that. You had to think about it, about whether you love your own wife. I answered you truthfully." "I know." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "That's the problem." They stood there in the kitchen, morning light streaming through the windows, and Victor felt the full weight of what he'd broken settle on his shoulders. "I'll do better," he said. "I can change." "I don't want you to change for me, Victor. I'm tired of being someone's project, someone's duty." "Then what do you want?" She looked at him for a long moment, and he saw something in her expression that terrified him more than anger ever could. Pity. "I want you to want to change," she said softly. "I want you to wake up one day and realize that you've been living half a life, that there's a whole person standing beside you who you've never bothered to see. I want you to feel the absence of something you didn't know you had, but I can't want that for you. You have to want it yourself." Très shatters. I do want it. Do you? Or do you just want things to go back to how they were, when everything was comfortable and I asked for nothing? He had no answer for that. Lillian turned away. No, gripping the edge of the counter. I'll stay until Margot is well. After that, I'm returning to the city. And then what? I don't know. She sounded exhausted. I honestly don't know. The week that followed was strange and stilted. Lillian moved through the house like a benevolent ghost, appearing at Margot's bedside or in the kitchen to oversee meals, then vanishing to the guest room she'd claimed as her own. She was polite when they crossed paths, professional even, but there was a distance between them that felt wider than any physical space. Victor watched her. He couldn't help himself. And in watching, he began to notice things he'd never paid attention to before. The way she hummed when she thought no one was listening. Some melody he didn't recognize, probably from before they'd met. How she always tucked her hair behind her left ear when she was concentrating. The fact that she took her tea with honey, not sugar, and preferred it lukewarm rather than hot. Small things. Meaningless things. Except they weren't meaningless, were they? They were pieces of a person he'd lived beside for 7 years without ever really seeing. One afternoon, he found her in the library reading to Margot. His daughter was propped up on pillows, color finally returning to her cheeks, and Lillian sat beside her with a book of fairy tales. And the prince realized, Lillian read, that he had been looking for treasure in all the wrong places. The greatest treasure had been beside him all along. Margot giggled. That's silly. How could he not notice? Some people are very good at not noticing things, Lillian said, her eyes flicking briefly to Victor in the doorway, even when they're right in front of them. Victor cleared his throat. May I speak with you? Lillian marked her place in the book. Darling, why don't you rest your eyes for a bit? I'll be right back. They stepped into the hallway, and Victor felt uncharacteristically nervous. He'd rehearsed what he wanted to say a dozen times, but now the words felt clumsy in his mouth. I've been thinking about what you said, he began. About how I don't know you, about how I've never asked. Victor. No, let me finish. He took a breath. You're right, about all of it. I've been a terrible husband, absent, even when I was in the same room. And I want to do better. I want to know you. She looked at him warily. This isn't about Margot asking you to say you love me, is it? Because she cornered you yesterday, and I heard… She what? Lillian's expression softened slightly. She asked you to tell me you love me, in front of the entire dinner table. You looked like you wanted the floor to swallow you whole. He remembered. Margot had looked at him with those enormous blue eyes and said, Papa, tell Mama you love her so she'll stay. And he'd sat there, frozen, unable to force the words past his lips because they would have been a lie, and he was done lying. I couldn't say it, he said now, because I don't. Not yet. Not the way you deserve to be loved. Lillian blinked, clearly not expecting that. Oh. But I want to. The admission felt like stepping off a cliff. I want to know the person I married, the person I've been living with all these years without ever really seeing. I want to earn the right to say those words and mean them. For a long moment, she just looked at him. Then, quietly, do you even know what you're asking for? No, he admitted, but I want to learn. She studied his face, searching for something. He tried not to flinch under her gaze. My birthday, she said finally, is October 14th. My favorite color is green. Not emerald, not forest green, but the color of new leaves in spring. Before we married, I was studying literature at my father's insistence, but what I really wanted to do was paint. I still paint sometimes in the morning room when no one's awake, because I was afraid you'd think it was frivolous. Each fact hit him like a stone. October 14th. He'd missed her birthday 3 weeks ago. He hadn't even realized. I'm sorry, he said hoarsely. I know. She turned to go back to Margot. But sorry isn't enough, Victor. It's a start, but it's not enough. Margot recovered fully by the end of the week. On Sunday morning, Lillian packed her trunk again, moving through the house with the same quiet efficiency she'd used to run it. Margot clung to her skirts, crying, Please don't go, Mama, please. Darling, I have to. Lillian knelt down, cupping her daughter's face. But I promise I'll visit every week, and you can write to me whenever you want. It's not the same. I know. Lillian's voice cracked just slightly. I know it's not. She stood, looking at Victor over their daughter's head. He wanted to say something, anything that would make her stay. But what right did he have to ask? Take care of her, Lillian said softly. I will. Really take care of her. Talk to her. Listen when she speaks. Learn what she loves, what she fears. Don't just hand her off to the nurse and the governess. I won't. And Victor? She met his eyes. Learn to see her before it's too late. What? There are some easy. Then she was gone, walking out the same door she'd left through 2 weeks ago, and Victor was left standing in a house that felt emptier than ever. Margot sobbed against his leg. He picked her up, awkward and uncertain, and she buried her face in his shoulder. I miss her already, she wept. I know, sweetheart, I know. And the terrible thing was, he did know. Because for the first time in his life, Victor Ashford missed someone, really missed them, felt their absence like a wound, and he had no idea what to do about it. The hallway clock still wasn't working. He made a mental note to have it fixed. It was the least he could do. The silence became its own presence. Victor noticed it first at breakfast, when he sat alone at a table meant for 8 and realized no one was going to fill the other chairs. Margot ate in the nursery now, still subdued from her illness, and the staff moved through their duties like shadows, efficient and invisible. He could hear the clock ticking in the hall. He'd had it repaired the day after Lillian left, and the sound felt accusatory, marking each empty second. 3 days passed, then 4. He tried to work, burying himself in ledgers and contracts, but the numbers blurred together. His business partner Thomas stopped by again, this time with concern etched across his face. You look terrible, Thomas said bluntly, settling into the chair across from Victor's desk. I'm fine. You're not. When's the last time you slept? Victor didn't answer. Sleep had become a battlefield. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lillian's face in the kitchen, heard her voice asking questions he couldn't answer. When is my birthday? What's my favorite color? Simple things. Foundational things. And he'd stood there like an idiot with nothing to say. The rumors are getting worse, Thomas continued. People are saying she left because you were cruel to her. Others say she was having an affair with that portrait artist. Mrs. Bentley from the social committee actually asked me if Lillian had run off with him. Victor's hand tightened on his pen. And what did you tell her? That it was none of her damn business. Thomas leaned forward. But Victor, you need to do something. Make a statement. Visit her publicly. Show the world you're reconciling. This scandal is affecting your business relationships. The Harrington contract. I don't care about the Harrington contract. Thomas blinked. You don't... Victor, that's a 50,000-pound deal. I said I don't care, Titi. What's happened to you? Victor looked at his friend and realized he didn't have an answer. What had happened to him? A week ago, he would have done exactly what Thomas suggested, managed the narrative, controlled the damage, treated his marriage like a business problem that needed solving. But now, the thought of using Lillian that way, of asking her to play the dutiful wife for appearances, made him feel sick. I need to fix this properly, he said finally. Not just make it look fixed. Thomas stood, shaking his head. You always were stubborn. Just don't wait too long. Some things, once broken, can't be repaired. After he left, Victor sat staring at the papers on his desk. Then, on impulse, he pulled out a fresh sheet and began to write. Dear Lillian. He stopped. What could he possibly say that would matter? That he was sorry. She already knew that. That he wanted her back? She knew that too. Words felt cheap, flimsy things compared to the weight of 7 years of neglect. He crumpled the paper and threw it in the bin. An hour later, he tried again. And again. By evening, the bin was full of failed attempts, and he was no closer to finding the right words than when he'd started. Papa? He looked up to find Margot standing in the doorway, clutching a stuffed rabbit Lillian had made for her 2nd birthday. The child looked small and lost in her nightgown. You should be in bed, he said, softer than he intended. I can't sleep. I miss Mama. I know. She crossed the room and climbed into his lap without asking permission. Victor froze, then awkwardly wrapped his arms around her. When had she gotten so big? When had he last held her like this? Are you going to bring her back? Margot asked. I'm trying. How? Good question. Victor looked down at his daughter's upturned face and saw Lillian's eyes staring back at him, the same shade of gray, the same quiet intelligence. I'm not sure yet, he admitted. You could tell her you love her. It's more complicated than that, sweetheart. Why? Because I don't know how to love her. Because I'm not sure I know how to love anyone. Because for 34 years I've been building walls and counting coins and telling myself that was enough. And now I'm standing in the ruins of a life I barely recognized was falling apart. Because I hurt her, he said instead. And when you hurt someone, you can't just say sorry and make it better. You have to show them you've changed. Margot considered this with a seriousness that made her look far older than 6. How do you show someone you've changed? I don't know. I'm still figuring that out. She nestled against his chest, yawning. You should ask Mama what she likes. That's what she does when she wants to make me happy. She asks what I want. Biggie Joyce, out of the mouths of children. Victor felt something shift in his chest, some locked door creaking open. That's very wise, he said quietly. Mama says I'm smart like her. You are. Margot was asleep within minutes, breathing softly against his shoulder. Victor sat there, holding her, afraid to move and break whatever spell had allowed this moment to happen. The house settled around them, creaking in the winter wind, and for the first time in days, the silence didn't feel quite so suffocating. When he finally carried Margot up to bed, he paused outside her door and made a decision. Tomorrow, he would go to the city. Not to bring Lillian back, not to convince her of anything, just to ask her what she wanted. It was a start. The city was a 2-hour carriage ride through gray November countryside that matched Victor's mood. He'd left Margot in Mrs. Davy's care with strict instructions to send for him immediately if anything was wrong, and the housekeeper had given him a look that suggested she thought he was being overdramatic. Maybe he was, but the thought of Margot waking up sick and scared without either parent made his stomach turn. Lillian's sister lived in a narrow townhouse in a respectable but not fashionable district. Victor had never been here before, had never even met Catherine properly, just a brief introduction at the wedding 7 years ago that he barely remembered. He stood on the front step for a full minute before knocking, rehearsing and discarding a dozen opening lines. The door opened to reveal a woman who looked like a sharper, more severe version of Lillian. Catherine's eyes narrowed when she saw him. Mr. Ashford. Mrs. Pemberton, I was hoping to speak with Lillian. I'm sure you were. She didn't move. Victor shifted his weight, uncomfortable under her steady glare. Is she home? That depends. Are you here to apologize or to make excuses? I'm here to listen. Catherine's eyebrows rose fractionally. That's a first. She stepped back, opening the door wider. She's in the garden. Try not to upset her more than you already have. The townhouse was smaller than Victor's estate, but felt more lived in, more real somehow. Books were stacked on tables, a half-finished piece of embroidery lay across a chair, children's toys scattered near the fireplace. Catherine led him through to a door at the back. The garden, she said, then added, Heard her again, and I'll make sure every person in London knows exactly what kind of husband you've been. Understood. Victor stepped outside into a tiny courtyard garden, barely 20 feet square but meticulously maintained. And there, sitting on a stone bench with a sketchbook in her lap, was Lillian. She looked different. It took him a moment to identify why. She wasn't wearing the careful, composed expression she'd worn at the estate. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, and she was dressed in a simple day dress without all the layers and structure of her usual attire. She looked younger, freer. She looked up when she heard his footsteps, and her expression shuddered immediately. Victor, I wasn't expecting you. May I sit? She hesitated, then nodded. He lowered himself onto the bench, careful to leave space between them, and tried not to look at the sketchbook. He failed. You can look, she said quietly, turning it toward him. It was a drawing of Margot, rendered in careful pencil strokes. Their daughter was laughing, her head thrown back in joy, captured in a moment Victor had probably witnessed 100 times without really seeing. It's beautiful, he said, and meant it. I draw her from memory now. Lillian's voice was steady but soft. Catherine's children are wonderful, but I miss Margot terribly. She misses you too. She can't sleep without that rabbit you made her. A smile flickered across Lillian's face, then disappeared. How is she, really? Better. The fever's completely gone. Dr. Henderson says she's fully recovered. Good. Lillian closed the sketchbook, setting it aside. Why are you here, Victor? I wanted to ask you something. Go ahead. He took a breath, feeling more nervous than he had before any business negotiation. What do you want? She frowned slightly. I don't understand. From me. From this situation. From your life. The words came faster now, tumbling out before he could second-guess them. I've spent the past week trying to figure out how to fix things, and I realized I've been doing exactly what I always do, making decisions about our life without asking what you actually want. So I'm asking now. What do you want, Lillian? For a long moment, she just stared at him. Then she laughed, but it was a bitter sound. You want to know what I want? After 7 years, now you're asking? Yes. It's too late for that, Victor. Maybe, but I'm asking anyway. She stood abruptly, pacing the small garden like a caged animal. What I want is impossible. I want to go back to the beginning and be seen. Really seen. Not as a wife or a mother or a household manager, but as a person. I want to be asked my opinion on things that matter. I want conversations that go deeper than what the cook is preparing for dinner. I want... She broke off, pressing her hands to her face. I want to matter to someone beyond what I can do for them. You matter to me. Do I? She spun to face him. Then tell me something about myself that isn't related to running your household or raising your child. Tell me one thing you know about who I am. The challenge hung between them. Victor's mind raced through 7 years of memories, searching for something, anything that fit what she was asking, and came up empty. I can't, he said finally, the admission like pulling out his own teeth. But I want to learn. I want to know who you are. And why? Because you feel guilty? Because people are talking? Because you miss having a competent wife managing your life? Because I hate this. The words burst out of him, raw and unplanned. I hate walking through that house and seeing your absence everywhere. I hate that Margot cries herself to sleep every night. I hate that I spent 7 years living next to someone and never bothered to know them. And now that they're gone, I realize how empty everything feels without them. Lillian's expression softened slightly, but the wariness remained. That's not love, Victor. That's just loneliness. I know. He stood, moving closer but not touching her. I know it's not love. Not yet. But it's something. It's more than I felt a month ago. And maybe if I keep feeling more, keep trying to understand who you are and why you matter beyond what you do for me, maybe eventually it could become something real. Or maybe you'll get bored once the challenge wears off. Maybe you'll win me back and then go right back to ignoring me because that's easier, that's comfortable. Maybe, he admitted. I can't promise I won't fail, but I can promise I'll try. She shook her head slowly. Trying isn't enough. Then what is? I don't know. The frustration in her voice was palpable. Don't you understand? I don't have an answer for you. I don't have a list of things you need to do to fix this. Because it's not about doing things, Victor. It's about being different. Fundamentally different. And I don't know if you can do that. Neither do I, he said honestly. But I want to find out. They stood there in the cold garden, and Victor could see her wavering. Then she sighed, wrapping her arms around herself. The rumors, she said quietly. Catherine told me what people are saying, that I was unfaithful, that you threw me out. I'll make a statement. I'll tell everyone the truth. Which truth? That your wife left because you admitted you never loved her? That will do wonders for both our reputations. Then what do you want me to say? Nothing. She met his eyes. I told you in my letter, I won't defend myself against the rumors. Say whatever you need to say to protect yourself. I don't care about protecting myself. I care about protecting you. Since when? The question hit like a slap. Victor had no answer. Lillian turned away. Lillian, looking at the bare trees beyond the garden wall. Go home, Victor. Take care of Margot. Stop worrying about me. I can't do that. Why not? Because you're in my head now. Because I can't stop thinking about all the things I never noticed, all the conversations we never had, All the moments I missed because I was too busy or too distracted or too sure that what we had was enough. Because I'm starting to understand what I lost, and the understanding is worse than the loss itself. Because you're my wife, he said instead, knowing it was the wrong answer even as he said it. On paper, her voice was flat. A legal arrangement. That's all we've ever been. It doesn't have to stay that way, doesn't it? She turned back to him, and there were tears in her eyes now, though she blinked them away furiously. Victor, I have spent 7 years trying to earn your affection. 7 years being the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect hostess. I organized your life, raised your child, smiled when you needed me to smile. And it was never enough. You never once looked at me the way you look at your business ledgers, like I was something worth studying, worth understanding. So forgive me if I don't believe that 1 week of discomfort has fundamentally changed who you are. Then give me a chance to prove it. I did give you a chance. I gave you 7 years of chances. I'm tired, Victor. I'm so tired of being invisible. The words hung in the cold air. Victor felt something crumbling inside him, some last defense he'd been holding on to. You're not invisible to me anymore, he said quietly. I see you, Lillian. Maybe not all of you, not yet, but I'm starting to. And what I see, he stopped, struggling for words. It terrifies me, because I'm realizing what I threw away, what I never bothered to appreciate. She wiped her eyes roughly. Pretty words, but words are easy. Then what's hard? Tell me what's hard and I'll do it. Know me. The demand was almost a whisper. Really know me. Not the version you've created in your head, not the wife you expected me to be. The actual person. My fears, my dreams, the things that make me laugh, and the things that keep me awake at night. Know me the way you know your business partners, the way you know Thomas. Thoroughly, completely, without assuming anything. How long will that take? I don't know, months, years, maybe forever, because people keep changing, keep growing, and if you stop paying attention, you lose them all over again. Victor felt the impossibility of it settling over him. How did you learn a whole person? Where did you even start? Your birthday is October 14th, he said suddenly. Your favorite color is the green of new leaves in spring. You wanted to be a painter, but studied literature instead. You paint in the morning room when you think no one's awake. Lillian's eyes widened slightly. I don't know what you paint, he continued. I don't know what subjects you prefer or which artists inspire you. I don't know what made you give up on that dream or whether you still want it, but I want to learn. I want to know all of it. Why? Because you asked me to. That's not good enough, Jack. Then because I'm starting to realize that knowing you might be the most important thing I ever do. More important than business deals or social status or any of the things I thought mattered. He took a step closer. Teach me, Lillian. Teach me how to see you. For a long moment, she just looked at him, searching his face for something. He tried to keep his expression open, honest, everything he'd never been before. I need time, she said finally. I need time to think about whether this is even possible. How much time? I don't know. As much as I need. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. Can I write to you? He asked. Can I visit again? Yeah, she hesitated. You can write, but Victor, don't make promises you can't keep. Don't tell me you'll change and then go back to being the man who couldn't even remember my birthday. Because if you do that, if you build my hopes up just to crush them again, I won't survive it. I'll leave England, I'll take Margot if I have to, but I will disappear and you will never find me. The threat was delivered calmly, matter-of-factly, and Victor knew she meant every word. I understand. Do you? She moved closer, her voice dropping. Because I need you to really understand this, Victor. I am not playing games. I am not being dramatic. If you cannot become the kind of man who sees his wife as a person, not a possession, then I am gone. Permanently. No second chances, no reconciliation, no grand gestures that fix everything. Just gone. I understand, he said again, and this time he felt the weight of it in his bones. She nodded once, then stepped back. You should go. Catherine will be wondering what we're talking about. Will you write back if I write to you? Maybe. If you write something worth responding to. He wanted to ask what that meant, but her expression told him she wouldn't explain. This was a test then. Another one. Everything was a test now. Every interaction a chance to prove he was different or confirm that he wasn't. "Tell Margot I love her," Lillian said as he turned to go. "Tell her I'll visit next week." "I will." He made it to the door before her voice stopped him. "Victor?" He turned. "My favorite artist is Turner," she said quietly. "I like the way he paints light, the way it transforms everything it touches. That's what I try to capture when I paint. Not things. Light. The way it changes the ordinary into something beautiful. Just say, cheap or in cheat." Victor felt something catch in his throat. "Thank you for telling me." "Don't thank me yet. You might not like what you learn." Then she turned back to her sketchbook, dismissing him. And Victor walked back through the townhouse, feeling like he'd just survived a battle he hadn't known he was fighting. Catherine was waiting in the front hall, arms crossed. "Well?" She's giving me a chance," Victor said. "Maybe. That's more than you deserve." "I know." Catherine's expression softened slightly. "My sister is the kindest person I know. She's also the most stubborn. If she decides you're not worth the effort, nothing you do will change her mind. So whatever you're planning, make it count." "I will." On the carriage ride home, Victor pulled out a notebook and began to write. Not a letter. Just notes. Everything Lillian had told him today, every detail she'd shared, every word she'd said. He wrote until his hand cramped, trying to capture not just the facts but the feeling behind them. The way her voice had softened when she talked about painting light, the way her eyes had gone distant and sad when she mentioned being invisible. By the time he reached the estate, the notebook had 3 pages filled with observations, questions, things to learn and remember. It wasn't much, but it was more than he'd had yesterday. Margot was waiting in the front hall when he arrived, still in her nightgown despite it being well past noon. "Did you see Mama?" she demanded. "I did. Is she coming home?" "Not yet." "Sweetheart?" Margot's face fell. Victor knelt down, bringing himself to her level. But, she sent you a message," he continued. "She said she loves you very much and she'll visit next week. That's not the same as coming home." "I know." "Why won't she come home, Papa? Did you tell her you're sorry?" "I did. But sometimes sorry isn't enough." Margot's lower lip trembled. "Then what is enough?" Victor thought about Lillian in the garden, about the way she'd looked at him with a mixture of hope and fear, about the challenge she'd laid down. "Know me. Really know me. Being different," he said finally. "Being better than I was before." "Are you going to be different?" "I'm going to try." "You have to do more than try," Margot said with the brutal honesty of children. "You have to actually do it." Victor pulled his daughter into a hug, breathing in the scent of soap and innocence. "You're right. I do." That night, he sat down and wrote his first real letter to Lillian. "Dear Lillian, I don't know how to begin this. Every sentence feels inadequate, every word too small for what I'm trying to say. You told me today to know you, to really know you. I've been sitting here for an hour trying to figure out where to start, and I keep coming back to the same place. I should have started 7 years ago, but I can't change the past. I can only work with what I have now. So I'm starting here with a question that I should have asked on our wedding night, but never did. What were you afraid of when you married me? I ask because I've been thinking about fear lately. My own, mostly. I'm afraid I'll fail at this. I'm afraid I'll slip back into old patterns because they're comfortable and familiar. I'm afraid that you'll give me chances and I'll waste them because I don't know how to be the kind of man you deserve. But you must have been afraid too that day. Standing there in a white dress, marrying a man you barely knew, stepping into a life that would erase most of who you were. What were you afraid of? What did you hope for? What dreams did you bury to become my wife? I want to know. Not because it will change what I did, but because I need to understand what I cost you. Tell me anything, even if it hurts, especially if it hurts. V. He sealed the letter before he could second-guess himself and gave it to a courier the next morning with instructions to deliver it directly to Lillian's hands. Then he waited. 2 days passed with no response. Then 3. Victor tried to focus on work, on Margot, on the 1,000 small details of running an estate that he'd never noticed before. But his mind kept circling back to that letter, to the question he'd asked, to the silence that felt like judgment. On the fourth day, a response arrived. He opened it with shaking hands. Victor, I was afraid you would be cruel. Not physically. I knew my father wouldn't marry me to a man who would beat me. But I was afraid of the small cruelties, the cutting remarks, the casual dismissals, the way men sometimes treat their wives like amusing children who need to be tolerated but never taken seriously. I was afraid I would disappear into your shadow and forget who I was. As it turned out, I was right to be afraid. Though you were never cruel, not really, just absent. In some ways, that was worse. You asked what dreams I buried. I wanted to travel. I wanted to see the galleries in Paris, the ruins in Rome, the coastlines of Greece. I wanted to paint what I saw and maybe, in some small way, add my own voice to the conversation of art. Instead, I learned to pour tea correctly and manage servants and smile at people who bored me. I'm not telling you this to hurt you. You asked for honesty, and this is honest. These are the things I gave up. These are the parts of myself I locked away to be your wife. Do you regret asking yet? L. Victor read the letter 3 times, each word cutting deeper than the last. Then he sat down and wrote back. Lillian, I don't regret asking. I regret that I made you afraid in the first place. I regret every moment you spent disappearing. If you could go anywhere right now, today, where would you go? V. Her response came faster this time. Venice. I've always wanted to see Venice. The way the light reflects off the water, the architecture, the colors. Why do you ask? L. Victor stared at the letter for a long time. Then he made a decision that would have seemed insane a month ago. He booked passage to Venice. For 2. Departing in 3 weeks. And then he wrote to Lillian with an offer that would either prove he was serious about changing or confirm everything she feared about him. Come with me to Venice. Just the 2 of us. No obligations, no expectations. I'll arrange for Margot to stay with Catherine. We'll have 2 weeks to see the city, to talk, to learn each other without the weight of the estate or society or all the roles we've been playing. If you still want to leave after that, I'll let you go. I'll give you a divorce if that's what you want, and enough money to live comfortably wherever you choose. But if there's any chance at all, that we could build something real, I want to try. Not because I'm lonely, not because people are talking, but because I'm starting to believe that knowing you might be worth more than anything I've built in my entire life. Say yes. V. He sent the letter and then sat back, heart pounding, terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. The response took 2 full days. When it came, it was a single word. Yes. Victor stared at the single word until it blurred. Yes. Just 3 letters that felt like permission to hope, though he knew better than to mistake acceptance for forgiveness. The preparations consumed the next 2 weeks like wildfire. He arranged everything himself, something he'd never done before, having always delegated such tasks to secretaries or, more often, to Lillian. Booking the passage, securing accommodations, organizing Margot's stay with Catherine. Each detail felt monumental, fraught with opportunities to fail. You're really going through with this? Thomas asked when Victor told him. They were in Victor's study, and his friend looked at him like he'd announced plans to sail off the edge of the world. I am. 2 weeks alone with a wife who can barely stand to look at you. What could possibly go wrong? Everything, Victor said. That's rather the point. Thomas shook his head. You've lost your mind. Probably. The business will survive without me for 2 weeks. You'll manage the Harrington deal. Victor, this is insane. You're throwing away everything you've built for a woman who walked out on you. I walked out on her first, Victor said quietly. I just did it while staying in the same house. Thomas left looking bewildered, and Victor returned to his lists. What did 1 pack for a trip meant to salvage a marriage? How did you prepare for 2 weeks of forced proximity with someone who knew all your failures? Margot took the news better than he expected. You're going to bring Mama back? She asked when he explained. I'm going to try. Will you be nice to her? The question landed like a punch. Yes, sweetheart, I'll be very nice to her. Promise? I promise. She studied him with those 2 wise eyes. You have to mean it, Papa. Mama says promises don't count if you don't mean them. Your mother is right. She's right about lots of things. Victor pulled his daughter close, breathing in the scent of her hair. She is. And it took me much too long to figure that out. The night before departure, he couldn't sleep. He paced his study until midnight, then gave up and went to Lillian's morning room, the place she'd mentioned painting in secret. He'd never been inside before. It had always been her space, one of the few rooms in the house he never entered. The door creaked when he opened it. Inside, the room was small and faced east to catch the sunrise. An easel stood by the window, draped with cloth. Canvases leaned against the walls, all turned backwards so their painted sides weren't visible. Victor hesitated, feeling like an intruder. Then he crossed to the nearest canvas and carefully turned it around. The painting showed the garden in spring, but it wasn't the garden itself that arrested him. It was the light. Morning sun filtered through new leaves, turning everything gold and green and impossibly alive. He could almost feel the warmth of it, the promise of a new season. This was what she'd meant about painting light, not the objects, but the way illumination transformed them. He turned another canvas. This one showed Margot asleep in her bed, afternoon sun streaming across her face. The tenderness in every brushstroke made his throat tight. Another, the estate at sunset, but lonely somehow, empty. Another, a woman's hands holding a teacup. He recognized Lillian's hands, the particular way she curved her fingers. But the hands were tense, the knuckles white, the whole composition speaking of barely contained stress. He'd been living in this house for 7 years while Lillian created an entire secret world in this small room. A world of light and shadow, of beauty and pain, of everything she felt and never said. Victor sat down heavily on the window seat. How many mornings had she come here while he slept, pouring her heart onto canvas because she had nowhere else to put it? He stayed until dawn broke, studying each painting, trying to learn the language she'd been speaking all along. They met at the train station. Victor arrived first, fidgeting with his luggage and feeling absurdly nervous. When Lillian appeared, he almost didn't recognize her. She wore a traveling dress in deep green, the color of new leaves, he realized, and her hair was styled simply. She looked younger, less burdened. "Hello?" she said. "Hello?" He reached for her bag. "May I?" She handed it over, and they stood there awkwardly until the conductor called for boarding. The train compartment was small, forcing them into closer quarters than they'd been since before she left. Victor tried to make conversation and failed 3 times before giving up and staring out the window at the passing countryside. "You're nervous," Lillian observed. "Terrified, actually." "Of what?" "Failing, saying the wrong thing, proving that you were right to leave." She was quiet for a moment. "At least you're honest about it." "I'm trying to be honest about everything now. It's harder than I expected." "Most worthwhile things are." They lapsed into silence, but it felt less hostile than before, more like a truce than a war. Dover came and went. The channel crossing was rough, and Lillian spent most of it on deck despite the cold spray. Victor joined her, standing beside her at the rail. "I used to dream about this," she said, her voice nearly lost in the wind. "Leaving England, seeing the world, I never thought it would actually happen." "What stopped you?" "You did. Marriage did. Duty did." She glanced at him. "I'm not blaming you. I made my choices. Choices I never gave you reason to regret less than you did." "No, you didn't." The honesty was brutal, but Victor was learning to bear it. They reached Calais at dusk and caught another train south. By the time they crossed into Italy, they'd developed a rhythm of sorts. Cautious conversations about neutral topics, long stretches of silence, careful avoidance of anything too deep. It felt like learning to walk on a frozen lake, testing each step before committing weight. Venice appeared through the morning mist like something from a dream. Lillian pressed her face to the window, and Victor saw something transform in her expression. Wonder. Pure, unguarded wonder. "It's real," she breathed. "I've seen so many paintings, but it's actually real." They took a water taxi from the station, gliding through canals that smelled of salt and age and secrets. The city rose around them, crumbling palaces, narrow bridges. Washing hung between buildings like flags of surrender to ordinary life. Their hotel was small but elegant, tucked down a side canal. The proprietor, a round woman named Signora Rossi, greeted them in rapid Italian that Victor barely followed. "2 camere," he said carefully. 2 rooms. Lillian glanced at him, but said nothing. Signora Rossi showed them upstairs to adjoining rooms with a shared balcony overlooking the canal. Victor set down his bags and immediately felt awkward. What did they do now? How did two people who barely knew each other despite 7 years of marriage spend 2 weeks together in a foreign city? "I'd like to walk," Lillian said from her doorway. "Is that all right?" "Of course. I'll just come with me." It wasn't quite a question. They wandered the narrow streets as afternoon sun turned the canals to molten gold. Lillian stopped every few minutes to stare at architectural details, at the way light caught on water, at elderly women gossiping on stoops. Victor watched her watching Venice and felt something shift in his chest. "You're staring," she said without looking at him. "Sorry." "Don't apologize. Just tell me why. I've never seen you like this." "Like what?" "Happy." The word hung between them. Lillian turned to face him, and he saw something complicated in her expression. "I wasn't unhappy all the time," she said carefully. "There were moments. Margot's first word. The first snow every winter. Finding a perfect rose in the garden. But yes, I suppose this is different. This is happy without anything to qualify it. I want you to feel like this more often." "That's not something you can give me, Victor. Happiness isn't a gift. It's something I have to find for myself." "Then what can I give you?" She considered this as they walked across a small bridge. Below, a gondola passed with a couple wrapped in each other's arms, and Victor felt a pang of envy for their easy intimacy. "Space?" Lillian said finally. "You can give me space to be myself. You can give me your attention without trying to fix things or manage them. You can give me honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. Those don't seem like much. They're everything I've been missing." That night, they ate at a small restaurant near the Rialto. The food was rich and strange, full of flavors Victor didn't recognize. Lillian spoke halting Italian to the waiter, and Victor realized he'd never known she spoke the language. "When did you learn Italian?" he asked. "I've been studying for 3 years. There's a tutor in the village who gives lessons." 3 years? I had a lot of free time. The implication stung, but he pushed past it. "What else have you been studying?" "Yes. History, art, music theory. I learned to play the pianoforte properly, not just the simple pieces acceptable for ladies." "I never knew. You never asked." There it was again, that simple, devastating truth. "Play something for me when we get back," he said. "Please. I'd like to hear it." She studied him across the table, searching for something. "All right. What else don't I know about you?" "Victor, we have 2 weeks. I'm not sure that's enough time to cover 7 years of living separate lives under the same roof. Then pick 3 things. 3 things you wish I'd known." She took a sip of wine, considering. "I'm terrified of thunderstorms. I have been since I was a child, when lightning struck a tree near my bedroom window. I used to hide in the linen closet during storms. I never noticed. I got very good at hiding it. What was I supposed to say? Pardon me, but could you hold me while the sky falls apart?" You would have thought I was being dramatic. The accusation hurt because it was probably true. "What else?" "I wanted more children. Not right away, but eventually. I wanted Margot to have siblings, but we never." She stopped, color rising in her cheeks. Victor felt heat creep up his own neck. Their marital relations had been infrequent and perfunctory, more obligation than intimacy. Another failure. "And the third thing?" he asked quietly. "I was lonely." Her voice dropped. "So lonely, I sometimes felt like I was disappearing, like I was becoming transparent, fading away until one day I'd simply cease to exist and no one would notice." The words landed like stones in still water, rippling outward with implications he wasn't ready to examine. "I noticed," he said. "When you left, I noticed. That's not the same as noticing when I was there." "I know." They finished the meal in heavy silence. Walking back through the dark streets, Victor found himself wanting to reach for her hand and not knowing if he had the right. In the end, he kept his hands in his pockets. The next 3 days passed in a strange, suspended reality. They explored the city together, visiting churches and museums and galleries. Lillian came alive in front of paintings, explaining techniques and influences with a passion that made her eyes bright. Victor listened and learned and tried not to think about how much of her life he'd missed. "Look at this," she said in the academia, standing before a Titian. "See how he layers the paint? The way the color builds depth? That's what I've been trying to learn. To make light feel dimensional, not flat." "Your paintings do that," Victor said. "In the morning room. The garden in spring. You can feel the warmth of the sun." She turned to him, startled. "You saw them? The night before we left. I hope you don't mind. I wanted to understand." "And did you understand?" "Some. Enough to know I've been blind." "That's a start." They had dinner that night in a small osteria, and the wine loosened both their tongues. "Tell me about the portrait artist," Victor said. "The one Thomas mentioned, the one people think you ran away with." Lillian's expression hardened. "Why?" "Because I want to know if there was any truth to it." "Would it matter if there was?" "Yes. No. I don't know." He leaned forward. "I just want the truth. The truth is that Marcus Delane was kind to me. He talked to me about art and literature and ideas. He asked my opinion on things and actually listened to the answers. And yes, for a few weeks while he was painting my portrait, I wondered what it would be like to be married to someone who saw me as more than a convenient fixture." Victor's chest tightened. "Did you—" "No." She cut him off. "I never touched him, never kissed him, never did anything beyond talk. But I thought about it. In my head, in those awful hours when you were working late and I was alone in our bed, I wondered what it would feel like to be wanted. So if you're asking if I was emotionally unfaithful, if I entertained fantasies about a life that wasn't mine, then yes, I was." The confession hung between them, raw and painful. "I'm sorry," Victor said finally. "For what?" "For making you lonely enough to need those fantasies. Don't." Her voice shook. "Don't apologize for things you can't change. Just be better now." "I'm trying." "I know, but trying isn't the same as succeeding." The next day, Victor suggested they skip the tourist sites and just wander. They got lost in the maze of streets behind San Marco, found a tiny bookshop where Lillian spent an hour browsing, emerged onto a square where children were playing and old men were arguing over chess. "This is nice," Lillian said, watching the scene. "No itinerary, no obligations, just existing." "We could do more of this," Victor said. "When we get back, we could take time to just be together without purpose." "Could we?" She looked at him skeptically. "Or would you get bored within a week and retreat to your study?" "I don't know, but I'd like to try." "Everything with you is trying. When do you actually do, Recep?" The frustration in her voice sparked something in him. "What do you want from me, Lillian? Tell me specifically. Give me something concrete to aim for." "That's the problem." She turned to face him. "You want a list, a set of tasks to complete. But this isn't a business deal you can negotiate. This is about fundamentally changing how you see the world." "Then help me change. I can't do it for you. Don't you see? I spent 7 years trying to mold myself into what you wanted, and it nearly destroyed me. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life trying to mold you into what I need." "So what then? We're just doomed?" "I don't know." She pressed her hands to her face. "I don't know, Victor. Maybe we are. Maybe some things break too thoroughly to fix." They stood there as the sunny square while life continued around them, children laughing, pigeons wheeling overhead, vendors calling out their wares. The normalcy of it all made their pain feel absurd and enormous at the same time. "I saw a woman yesterday," Victor said quietly. "In the market. Her husband was buying flowers, and she was laughing at something he said, and they looked at each other like they were the only two people in the world. And I thought, I've never made you look at me like that." "No," Lillian agreed softly. "You haven't. I want to." "Wanting isn't enough. Then what is?" She turned away, staring at the children playing. "I don't have an answer for you. If I did, I would have told you years ago." That night, Victor did something he'd never done in his life. He got truly, thoroughly drunk. He sat in a wine bar near the hotel and worked his way through bottle after bottle of local red while Lillian was presumably in her room. Around midnight, he stumbled back to the hotel and found her on the shared balcony, wrapped in a shawl and staring at the canal. "You're drunk," she observed. Very. That's not going to solve anything. I know, but I'm tired of trying to solve things. I'm tired of failing at every conversation. I'm tired of wanting something I don't know how to have. He slumped into the chair beside her, and the world tilted pleasantly. Do you remember our wedding night? He asked. Victor? No. Please, just, do you remember? Yes. I was terrified. Not of you, of the whole thing, of being responsible for another person's happiness. So I told myself it didn't matter, that marriage was a practical arrangement and happiness was beside the point. He laughed bitterly. I was an idiot. You were young. I was selfish. I still am. But I'm trying to be less selfish. And it's the hardest thing I've ever done because it turns out I don't actually know how to think about someone else's needs without resenting them. At least you're honest about it. I'm honest about everything now. It's terrible. I hate it. I want to go back to not knowing, to not seeing, to not feeling this. He gestured wildly at his chest. Feeling what? This ache. This constant ache of knowing I ruined something before it even had a chance to begin. Lillian was quiet for a long moment. Then, carefully, You didn't ruin it alone, Victor. I could have fought harder, could have demanded more, could have refused to accept crumbs when I deserved a feast. We broke this together. So how do we fix it together? I don't know if we can. The words should have devastated him, but in his drunken state, they just made him sad. I love you, he said suddenly. Or I think I might be starting to. Is that possible? To start loving someone after 7 years of not? She looked at him with an expression he couldn't read. I think you're drunk and saying things you'll regret tomorrow. Maybe, but they're still true. Go to bed, Victor. Will you still be here in the morning? We have another week. I'm not leaving yet. But you might. Eventually, you might decide I'm not worth the effort. That's a possibility you'll have to live with. He stood, swaying, and impulsively caught her hand. Dance with me. What? Dance? Here. Now. There's music somewhere. Can you hear it? There was music, faint strains of an accordion drifting from some distant party. Victor, you're drunk. Please, I never asked you to dance at our wedding. I never asked you to dance at all. Just once. Please. She hesitated, then stood. He pulled her close, too close probably, and they moved awkwardly on the small balcony. He stepped on her feet twice. She laughed despite herself, and the sound was the most beautiful thing he'd heard in years. This is ridiculous, she said. I know. We don't even like each other most of the time. I know. But I haven't danced in years, and it's nice, even if you're terrible at it. They swayed in the darkness while Venice carried on below them, and Victor tried to memorize everything. The warmth of her hand in his, the scent of her hair, the way she felt against him, solid and real. And still here. When the music faded, she pulled away gently. Bed, she said firmly. Before you fall over. He let her guide him to his room. He let her guide, and she left him at the door with a softness in her expression that gave him hope. Dangerous, foolish hope. The hangover the next morning was legendary. You deserve that, Lillian said without sympathy when he emerged at noon looking like death. I know. Do you remember what you said last night? His stomach dropped. Some of it. You told me you loved me. I did. Did you mean it? Victor sat down heavily, head pounding. I meant I'm starting to understand what love might feel like. When I think about you leaving permanently, about never seeing you again, something in my chest caves in. Is that love? I don't know. But it's something. That might just be fear of loneliness. Maybe it started that way. But it's growing into something else. Something that makes me want to know what you're thinking at random moments. Something that makes me notice when you're sad, even when you're smiling. Something that makes me want to be better than I am. She studied him for a long moment. I'm going to give you a test, all right? Name 3 things about me that have nothing to do with being your wife or Margot's mother. 3 things about me as a person. Ooh, his heart hammered. This was the same challenge she'd thrown at him before, and he'd failed. But he'd been watching now, learning, paying attention. You hum when you're concentrating, he said slowly. Something classical, though I don't know what piece. You tuck your hair behind your left ear when you're nervous, and you're afraid of thunderstorms because of lightning striking a tree when you were young. That's two physical habits and something I just told you 3 days ago. Be'idikiri ichipata. The failure burned, but he pushed on. You wanted to be a painter. You love Turner because of how he paints light. You speak Italian, though you hide it. You've been lonely for years. You wanted more children. Those are things I've told you on this trip. Then I'm still learning. His voice rose, desperation leaking through. I'm trying, Lillian. I see you now. Maybe not all of you. Maybe not perfectly. But I see you in a way I never did before. Tell me something you've observed yourself. Something I haven't told you. He closed his eyes, thinking back through the days in Venice. When you look at paintings, you stand on your left foot and cross your right ankle behind it. You always read the placard first, even though you usually know more than it says. You drink your coffee black in the morning, but with cream in the afternoon. You flinch when church bells ring too loudly, like they startle something in you. And yesterday, when we were walking, you stopped in front of a building and stared at the doorway for a full minute. And I don't know why, but I could see it meant something to you. Lillian's expression had changed, something softening around her eyes. The doorway, she said quietly, looked like the entrance to my childhood home, before my father died, before everything changed and we had to sell it. I haven't thought about that house in years, but standing there, I could smell the roses my mother used to plant by the steps. I'm sorry I didn't ask. You're noticing things now. That's progress. Is it enough? She sighed. Victor, I don't know what enough looks like. I'm making this up as I go along. Then we'll make it up together. The next days were different, softer somehow. The next days, though still complicated, they talked more, argued less. Lillian showed him how to really look at paintings, and Victor listened without trying to fix or solve anything. He was learning that sometimes she just wanted to share, not to be managed. They rented a gondola and floated through the smaller canals, and Lillian trailed her fingers in the water like a child. I used to dream about this, she said, being here, seeing this. I never imagined I'd be with you when I did. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not sure yet. But that night, she knocked on his door and asked if he wanted to sit on the balcony. They talked until 3 a.m. about nothing important, books they'd read, places they'd imagined visiting, childhood memories. It was the longest conversation they'd ever had, and when she finally went to bed, Victor felt like he'd been given a glimpse of who Lillian might have been if he'd bothered to ask years ago. With 3 days left, everything imploded. They were in the Piazza San Marco when Victor saw someone he recognized, Edward Worthington, a business associate from London. The man was with his wife, and they spotted Victor before he could retreat. Ashford, what a surprise, Edward boomed, approaching with hand extended. Didn't expect to run into you here. Victor shook hands stiffly. Worthington, Mrs. Worthington. The woman's eyes landed on Lillian with poorly concealed curiosity. And this must be your wife. How lovely to finally meet you, Mrs. Ashford. We've heard so much. The emphasis on heard was deliberate, loaded. How nice, Lillian said coolly. Taking a second honeymoon? Mrs. Worthington's smile was sharp. How romantic, especially given all the unpleasantness back home. I'm not sure what you mean, Victor said, though he knew exactly what she meant. Oh, just the talk, but I'm sure it's all lies. These things always are, aren't they? Lillian's expression had gone perfectly blank, the mask she wore at social events when being silently eviscerated. If you'll excuse us, Victor said coldly, we have an appointment. He steered Lillian away, but the damage was done. She walked beside him in rigid silence until they reached a quiet campo, then turned on him. You didn't defend me. What? She was implying I was unfaithful, and you said nothing. I got us out of there by making excuses. You should have told her the truth. Told her that the rumors were lies, that I'd never betrayed you, that... She broke off, voice shaking. But you can't, can you? Because that would mean admitting why I really left. Admitting that you're the one who failed. That's not fair. Fair? Her voice rose. You want to talk about fair? I've spent weeks watching you try to learn how to see me, And the first time someone challenges you publicly, you retreat. You protect yourself instead of defending me. I was trying not to make a scene. I don't care about scenes. I care about you standing beside me instead of 2 steps back ready to run. I'm here, aren't I? I'm in Venice trying to fix this. For yourself. The words exploded out of her. You're doing all of this for yourself to ease your guilt, to fix the mess you made. But what about what I need? When do I get someone who puts me first without having to be taught how? That's not fair, he said again, knowing it was the wrong response. You keep saying that, but you know what's actually not fair? Spending 7 years invisible. Having a husband who had to lose you to even notice you existed. Being the subject of vicious rumors while you stay silent because defending me might be uncomfortable. I'm trying. Stop saying you're trying. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. Either do it or don't, but stop hiding behind effort like it absolves you of actually succeeding. Saw it. People were staring. Victor reached for her arm, but she jerked away. Don't touch me, don't. She pressed her hands to her face, shoulders shaking. I can't do this. I thought I could, but I can't. Lillian, please. I want to go home. We have 3 more days. I don't care. I want to go home. Back to England, away from you. I can't. Her voice broke completely. I can't keep hoping you'll become someone you're not capable of being. The words hit like a physical blow. Victor stood frozen while Lillian turned and walked away, disappearing into the maze of streets, and he knew with terrible certainty that he'd just failed the only test that truly mattered. He found her 2 hours later at the hotel, already packed. Don't, he said from the doorway. Please don't leave like this. I have to. One more chance. Please, I'll do better. You keep saying that. She whirled on him, eyes red. But when will you actually be better? When will I stop having to ask for the bare minimum and have you just give it? I don't know how. The admission tore out of him. I don't know how to be what you need. I'm learning, but I'm slow, and I make mistakes, and I don't... His voice cracked. I don't know how to love you the way you deserve, but I'm trying to learn, and I need more time. I've given you 7 years, Mossy. Then give me 7 more, or 700. I'll take whatever you'll give me. Why should I? Because... He stopped, searching for the truth beneath all his fear and desperation. Because I finally understand what I'm losing. Not the convenience of a wife, not the appearance of a stable marriage, but you, the actual person, the woman who paints light and speaks Italian and stands on one foot in museums, the woman who's been right beside me for 7 years while I looked everywhere except at her. And the thought of never having a chance to really know that woman, to really love her properly, is worse than any business failure or social scandal or anything else I've ever been afraid of. Yeturigi. Amman. Lillian sank onto the bed looking exhausted. Pretty words again. Then test me. Give me a task. Something hard. Something that proves I mean this. I already did. I asked you to defend me in that square, and you failed. Then let me fail again, and again, and keep giving me chances until I learn how not to fail. Why? Why should I keep sacrificing pieces of myself for someone who might never learn? Because Victor knelt in front of her, forcing himself to meet her eyes. Because somewhere in all of this, in all these letters and conversations and days in Venice, haven't you felt it too? The possibility that we could become something real? Not what we were, but something new. Something worth fighting for. She looked at him for a long moment, and he saw her wavering. Looked at him saw the hope she was trying desperately to protect. Name 3 things, she whispered. 3 things about me that matter. Not habits, not facts, things that make me who I am. His mind raced. This was it. The real test. You're brave, he said slowly. Leaving took courage I don't think I'll ever fully understand. You're patient. You've waited 7 years for me to wake up. And you're still here despite every reason not to be, and he struggled for the right word. You're luminous, the way you see the world, the way you find beauty in things I never noticed. It transforms everything around you, including me. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she didn't look away. You're learning. Is it enough? Oh, I don't know yet, but it's something. Then come back with me. Not to the estate, back to Catherine's. Let me keep learning. Let me prove I can be different. And if you can't, then you'll know you gave me every chance, and you can leave without regret. She stood, crossing to the balcony, and Victor's heart hammered while he waited. Venice sprawled below them, beautiful and ancient and full of stories about love found and lost, and sometimes, miraculously, found again. One more chance, Lillian said finally, not turning around. But Victor, if you fail me again, if you retreat or hide or protect yourself instead of standing beside me, I'm done. No more chances. No more hope. Just done. I understand. Do you? Because I need you to really understand what I'm risking here. I'm risking the last bit of hope I have left. If you destroy that, you destroy all of me. The weight of it settled over him like a crown or a noose. He couldn't tell which. I won't fail you again, he said, and prayed it wasn't another lie he'd tell himself until it was too late to matter. The journey back to England felt different. Lillian sat across from him in the train compartment, sketchbook open on her lap, drawing the passing Italian countryside. Victor watched her work, the careful strokes of charcoal, the way she squinted at the horizon to capture the light just right. You're staring again, she said without looking up. I'm observing. There's a difference. Is there? One is invasive, the other is interested. What? She glanced at him then, something almost like amusement flickering across her face. You're learning the vocabulary. I'm trying. They lapsed into silence, but it felt less fragile than before. Like something had shifted in Venice. Not fixed, but cracked open in a way that let light in. When they reached London, Catherine was waiting at her townhouse with Margot. Their daughter launched herself at Lillian the moment they entered, and Victor watched his wife gather their child close, whispering reassurances into her hair. Papa! Margot turned to him, and he braced for accusations. Instead, she asked, Did you bring Mama back? I'm working on it. What? Diento sei pas sam. Catherine caught his eye over Margot's head, her expression unreadable. Later, while Lillian put Margot to bed upstairs, Catherine cornered him in the parlor. What happened in Venice? We talked. We fought. We started to understand each other. That's vague. It's complicated. Catherine's eyes narrowed. If you hurt her again, I know. You'll destroy my reputation. You've made that clear. No? She moved closer, voice dropping. If you hurt her again, I'll make sure she never doubts leaving you is the right choice. I'll remind her every day what she deserves, and I'll watch while she builds a life without you. And you'll have to live knowing you had something precious and crushed it through sheer negligence. The threat was more effective than any social scandal could be. I understand. She culpa or shait. Do you? Because Lillian is the kindest person I know, but kindness has limits. She's reached hers. Whatever you're doing, it needs to be real. It is real. Then prove it. After Catherine left, Victor sat alone in the parlor and pulled out his notebook, the one he'd been keeping since before Venice. It was full now, pages of observations and questions and half-formed thoughts about who Lillian was beyond the roles she'd played. He added a new entry. She holds Margot differently than she used to, more tightly, like she's afraid of losing her too. The estate felt foreign when Victor returned 3 days later. He'd left Lillian and Margot at Catherine's with the promise to visit twice weekly, and the house echoed with their absence. Mrs. Davies greeted him with barely concealed relief. Welcome home, sir. Shall I prepare your study? Actually, no. Victor set down his bags. I need to see the morning room. Oh, her eyebrows rose. Mrs. Ashford's morning room? Yes. It's quite dusty, sir. We don't clean in there without her permission. Then get her permission. Write to her. Tell her I want to set up a proper studio. Good light, quality supplies, everything an artist might need. Mrs. Davies stared at him like he'd sprouted a second head. A studio? For painting? Is there another kind? But, sir, that room is so small. Then we'll use the south drawing room. It has better light anyway. He was already moving, plans forming. Get estimates for skylights. And contact art suppliers in London. I'll need a list of what professional painters use. Sir, I don't... Mrs. Davies. He stopped, turning to face her. My wife is an artist. A real one. And for 7 years, she's been hiding in a cramped room at dawn, because she thought I'd find her passion frivolous. That ends now. The housekeeper's expression softened slightly. I'll write to her today. Thank you. Victor spent the next week transforming the south drawing room. He hired painters to redo the walls in soft cream, brought in proper easels and storage for canvases, installed better lamps for winter months when daylight failed. He studied catalogs of art supplies with the same intensity he'd once reserved for shipping contracts, learning the difference between sable and synthetic brushes, understanding why some pigments cost 10 times others. Thomas visited and found him elbow-deep in paint swatches. What in heaven's name are you doing? Building a studio. For whom? Lillian. Thomas looked around at the controlled chaos, canvas samples, color charts, furniture moved aside. You've lost your mind. Possibly. The south drawing room is for entertaining, for showing wealth, for whatever we decide it's for. Victor set down the swatches. And I'm deciding it's for my wife to paint in. She's not even here. She will be. You don't know that. No, but I'm preparing anyway. Thomas shook his head slowly. The Harrington contract fell through, by the way. They went with Morrison. All right. All right. Victor, that was £50,000. Then we'll find other contracts. You're not even upset. I'm too busy to be upset. Hey. Thomas left muttering about insanity, and Victor returned to his work. He wrote to Lillian that evening, describing everything he was doing and why. Her response came 3 days later. You're building me a studio. Yes. Why? Because you're an artist, and artists need studios. Because I want you to paint in daylight, not hide at dawn. Because I'm trying to show you that I see who you are. It's too much. It's nowhere near enough. But it's a start. The letters became more frequent. Victor wrote about the estate, about changes he was making, hiring a new groundskeeper who actually listened to the gardener's ideas, reorganizing the household schedule to be less rigid, even learning to cook simple meals because he'd realized he'd never prepared his own food in his life. Lillian wrote about Margot, about her days with Catherine, about a painting she was working on. Slowly, carefully, they were building something through words, not the relationship they'd had, but the one they might have if they both kept trying. Sunday came and Victor kept his promise to visit. He arrived at Catherine's townhouse with flowers, not roses, which he'd always sent before because they were expected, but wildflowers in shades of green because Lillian had mentioned loving them once in a letter. She opened the door herself and stopped at the sight of them. They're beautiful, she said quietly. They reminded me of your favorite color, new leaves in spring. Something shifted in her expression. You remembered. I'm remembering everything now. She let him in, and they spent the afternoon with Margot, who chattered endlessly about her adventures with Aunt Catherine. Victor listened, really listened, asking questions and laughing at her stories. At one point, he caught Lillian watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Later, after Margot was in bed, they sat in Catherine's small garden despite the December chill. The studio Lillian said. Mrs. Davies wrote to me about it. I hope that's all right. It's more than all right. She stopped searching for words. No one's ever done anything like that for me before. Then I've set a very low bar for myself. She almost smiled. You've set an impossible bar. Grand gestures are easy. Maintaining them is harder. It's not a gesture. It's infrastructure. You need a place to work, so I'm building you one. Infrastructure. She tested the word. That's such a you way to describe it. Is that bad? No, it's honest. You're approaching this like a project. Should I not? She considered this. I think you should approach it however makes sense to you. As long as you remember that I'm not actually a project to complete. You're a person I'm learning to know. Yes. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching their breath mist in the cold air. Tell me something, Lillian said eventually. Something you've learned about yourself in all this. Victor thought about the past month, about all the ways he'd changed, and all the ways he'd discovered he needed to change. I've learned I'm afraid, he said finally, of failing, of being seen as less than competent, of people discovering I don't actually know what I'm doing most of the time. So I built walls. made everything transactional, measurable, controllable, including our marriage. And now? Now I'm learning that some of the best things can't be controlled, can't be measured or managed or solved with enough effort. They just have to be felt and lived through. That must be terrifying for you. It is, but it's also, he struggled for the word, freeing, in a strange way. I don't have to have all the answers anymore. I just have to be willing to find them. Lillian reached over and took his hand. The touch was brief, tentative, but it felt like a miracle. That's growth, she said softly. Real growth. The following Tuesday, disaster struck. Victor was in his study when Mrs. Davies rushed in, face pale. Sir, there's someone here to see you, a Mr. Edmund Hartwell, Lillian's father. Victor's stomach dropped. Show him in. Edmund Hartwell was a tall man who'd grown thinner since Victor had seen him last, at the wedding 7 years ago. His face was carved in disapproval. Mr. Ashford, Mr. Hartwell, this is unexpected. I've come about my daughter. Lillian is in London. I know where she is. I also know why. Edmund's voice was ice. The rumors have reached even my ears that she left you, that there were whispers of infidelity, that you've dragged our family name through scandal. The rumors are lies. I don't care if they're lies. Edmund slammed his hand on the desk. The damage is done. Lillian's reputation is in tatters. Her prospects? She's married to me. A marriage that appears to be ending. When it does, who will have her? A woman who abandoned her husband, subject of vicious gossip? She'll be ruined. Victor felt rage building in his chest. Lillian left because I failed her, because I was a terrible husband who took her for granted and never once asked what she wanted from life. The failure is mine, not hers. That's not how society sees it. Then society is wrong. Shut. Society doesn't care about right and wrong. It cares about appearances. Edmund leaned forward. You need to make a statement, public reconciliation. Show the world that whatever happened was a misunderstanding. No. Excuse me? I said no. I won't use Lillian that way. Won't ask her to perform for people who've already judged her. You're being foolish. I'm being honest. For the first time in my marriage, I'm actually being honest. Victor stood. Your daughter deserves better than a husband who treats her like a prop for public consumption. She deserves to be seen and known and valued for who she is, not what she can do for my reputation. Pretty words, but words won't restore her honor. Then I'll find another way. Edmund studied him with cold eyes. You've changed. I'm trying to. It may be too late. The damage to her reputation may be irreparable. Then I'll spend the rest of my life helping her build a new one based on truth, not appearances. You're a fool. Probably, but I'm her fool if she'll have me. After Edmund left, Victor sat down and did something that would have been unthinkable a month ago. He wrote letters, dozens of them, to every major society figure he knew, not defending himself, not making excuses, simply stating facts. My wife left because I neglected her. The rumors of her infidelity are completely false. She is the most honorable person I know, and I am the one who failed our marriage. If you wish to gossip, gossip about my shortcomings, not her character. He sent them all, knowing it would make him look weak, knowing it would hurt his business relationships, not caring. Thomas arrived the next day, apoplectic. Have you completely lost your senses? You're admitting fault publicly. You're making yourself look like a fool. I am a fool. I was a fool. Why hide it? Because this is business suicide. Half your associates will think you're unstable. Then I'll find new associates. Victor. No. Victor cut him off. For 34 years, I've put business first, profit first, reputation first. And what did it get me? A hollow life and a wife who had to leave to make me notice she existed. So if admitting my failures costs me business, so be it. I'd rather have Lillian than another contract. Thomas stared at him. You really have changed. I really have. For her sake, I hope it's enough. The letters caused exactly the scandal Victor expected. Within days, the whole affair was the talk of London society. But something unexpected happened. The gossip began to shift. People who'd been whispering about Lillian's supposed infidelity started questioning their own assumptions. A few even wrote back, apologizing for spreading rumors. More importantly, word reached Lillian. She arrived at the estate unannounced 3 days later, walking into Victor's study without knocking. "What did you do?" He looked up from his papers. "I told the truth. You made yourself look weak, incompetent. You've damaged your business reputation." "I know." "Then why?" "Because I meant what I said in Venice. I won't protect myself at your expense anymore." She sank into the chair across from his desk, looking shaken. "People are talking. Let them." "You don't understand. They're talking about you, saying you're a changed man, saying your wife must be extraordinary to inspire such devotion. You are extraordinary." "Victor, no, listen." He came around the desk, kneeling in front of her chair. "For 7 years, I let people think whatever they wanted about our marriage. I never defended you, never praised you, never made it clear how much you did to hold everything together. I'm not making that mistake again. This isn't a gesture to win me back. This is me standing beside you the way I should have from the beginning." Tears welled in her eyes. "You've ruined yourself for me." "I've finally gotten my priorities straight." She reached out, touching his face gently. "You're still learning." "I am, every day." "The studio is beautiful. I saw it when I arrived." "Will you use it?" "If I come back, when I come back, I don't know yet." The qualifier stung, but he accepted it. "Fair enough." She stood, and he thought she might leave. Instead, she crossed to the window, looking out at the winter garden. "Margot wants to come home," she said quietly. "She's been crying for her own bed, her own room. Catherine's been wonderful, but it's not the same. Bring her home." "I'm not sure I'm ready to come with her." Victor's heart clenched, but he kept his voice steady. "Then bring her home and visit every day. Stay in the guest wing if you're more comfortable there. But don't keep her away because you're still deciding about us. That's very reasonable of you. I'm learning to think about what she needs, not what I want." Lillian turned to face him. "When did you become this person?" "I'm not sure I'm him yet. I'm just trying him on, seeing if he fits." "He fits better than the old version." "The old version was terrible." "Yes," she agreed. "He was." They stood there in the study, and Victor felt the weight of all the days ahead. Days of proving himself, of learning, of slowly building something real from the ruins of what they'd had. "I'll bring Margot home tomorrow," Lillian said finally. "But Victor, I'm still staying with Catherine. I need more time." "Take all the time you need. What if I decide it's not enough? What if I decide you've changed, but I've changed too much to go back? Then I'll let you go. And I'll spend the rest of my life regretting that I wasted the years I had." Something in her expression cracked. "I don't want to hurt you." "I know, I don't want to hurt you either, but we might hurt each other anyway because we're both terrified and neither of us knows what we're doing." "That's honest. I'm done with dishonest." She moved toward the door, then paused. "The south drawing room, the studio. You moved all the furniture out. Where will you entertain guests?" "I don't care about entertaining guests." "You used to care very much." "I used to care about a lot of things that don't matter. Now I care about you painting in good light. That matters more." Lillian left without responding, but Victor saw her touch her fingers to her lips as she walked away, like she was holding on to words she wasn't ready to speak yet. Margot came home the next day with enough luggage for a month-long trip, chattering excitedly about sleeping in her own bed again. Lillian helped her settle in, then prepared to leave. "Stay for dinner," Victor said. "Please. Just tonight." She hesitated, then nodded. Dinner was awkward at first, the three of them at the big table, trying to find a rhythm. But Margot filled the silence with stories about London, and slowly the tension eased. Victor watched Lillian across the table and noticed things he'd never paid attention to before. The way she cut Margot's meat without being asked, the way she laughed at their daughter's silly jokes, the way she looked at him sometimes when she thought he wasn't watching. After dinner, Margot begged Lillian to stay for bedtime stories. "Please, Mama, just one night. Then you can go back to Aunt Catherine's." Lillian looked to Victor, who shrugged. "Case, we have plenty of guest rooms." "All right," she said finally. One night, but one night became two, then three. Lillian didn't officially move back, but she stopped leaving. The guest room became her room, and she and Victor fell into a strange new pattern, living in the same house but separate, sharing meals and Margot and occasionally long conversations in the garden, but maintaining careful distance otherwise. It was simultaneously frustrating and wonderful. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Christmas approached, and Mrs. Davies began decorating the house without being asked. Victor found Lillian in the studio one afternoon, working on a canvas. "Can I watch?" he asked from the doorway. She glanced back, considering, then nodded. He settled into a chair and watched her paint. The subject was the garden in winter, bare branches, frost on the grass, weak December sunlight. But the way she captured the light made everything feel alive despite the season's death. "It's beautiful," he said when she paused. "It's not finished." "Still beautiful." She set down her brush, wiping her hands on a cloth. "I got a letter from my father. I know, he visited me. He told me. Said you were either very brave or very stupid." "Huh. What do you think?" "I think you're both." She turned to face him. "You've upended your whole life in a month, changed everything. How do I know this is real? How do I know you won't wake up one day and resent me for all you've given up? I haven't given up anything that mattered. Your reputation is recovering. People respect honesty more than I expected. Your business is fine. Different clients, but fine. Your comfortable life was empty. I'd rather have an uncomfortable life with you in it than a comfortable one without you." She looked at him for a long moment. "Why? Why what? Why are you doing all this? Really? What do you want from me?" Victor stood, moving closer but not touching her. "I want to know you. All of you. I want to hear your opinions on things that have nothing to do with running a household. I want to watch you paint and understand what you see that I don't. I want to make you laugh and comfort you when you're sad, and be the person you trust with your fears and dreams. I want to be your partner, not your burden, your companion, not your obligation." That's a lot to want. "I know, and I know I don't deserve any of it yet, but I want it anyway." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I'm so tired of being afraid." "Of what?" "Of hoping, of believing you'll be different, and then being disappointed again." Victor reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he took her hand. "Then let me be afraid with you. Let's both be terrified together and see what happens." "That's not very reassuring." "I know, but it's honest." She laughed through her tears. "You and your honesty. It's all I have to offer." "No." She squeezed his hand. "You have more than that now. You have effort. You have change. You have—" She stopped, voice breaking. "You have the beginning of something that might be love." "Is that enough?" "I don't know yet, but it's more than we had before." They stood there in the winter light streaming through the studio windows, holding hands like uncertain teenagers, and Victor felt something shift in his chest. Not complete healing, that would take time, maybe years, but a crack in the wall he'd built around his heart, letting in the possibility that he might learn to love properly after all. Christmas Eve arrived with fresh snow. Margot woke them both at dawn, Lillian from the guest room, Victor from the master bedroom, demanding they come see the world turned white. They stood together at the window, Margot between them, watching fat flakes drift down like blessings. "It's magic," Margot breathed. "It is," Lillian agreed softly. Victor looked at his wife's profile, the way the morning light caught in her hair, and felt something settle in his chest. Not contentment exactly, but rightness, like pieces shifting into place. "Thank you," he said quietly. She glanced at him. "For what?" "For being here. For giving me chances I don't deserve. For being patient while I learn how to be a better man." "You're welcome." She paused. "Though I'm not as patient as you think. I'm just as scared as you are." "Of what, Sate?" "Of this working. Of being happy again and trusting it." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Of loving you and having it be real this time." The words hung in the snowy morning air. Margot, oblivious, had run to get her boots so she could play outside. "Is it?" Victor asked. Real? Lillian turned to face him fully. It's starting to be. What you've done, what you're doing, it's not perfect. You still mess up. You still default to solving instead of listening sometimes. But you're trying, and the trying is real, and that's... She blinked back tears. That's more than I hoped for. I love you, he said, and this time the words didn't feel borrowed or forced. They felt true. I don't know if I'm saying it right or feeling it right, but I know I love you. The actual you, not the idea of you. She smiled through tears. Say that again. I love you, Lillian Hartwell Ashford. I love that you paint light and speak Italian and stand on one foot in museums. I love that you're brave enough to leave and strong enough to come back. I love... She kissed him. It wasn't their first kiss. They'd had a wedding kiss 7 years ago, perfunctory and meaningless. But this felt like the first real one. Tentative and sweet and full of possibility. When they broke apart, Margot was standing in the doorway with her boots on, grinning. Does this mean Mama's staying? Victor looked at Lillian. She looked back, something shifting in her expression, from fear to decision, from maybe to yes. I'm staying, she said softly. Not because everything's fixed, but because I want to see what we build from here. Margot whooped and ran to hug them both, too. And Victor wrapped his arms around his wife and daughter, feeling the weight of second chances and the lightness of hope mixing in his chest. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There would still be hard days ahead, still arguments and misunderstandings and moments when old patterns tried to reassert themselves. But standing there in the winter light with the two people who mattered most in the world, Victor understood that love wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, about learning, about choosing, every day, to see the person beside you. And for the first time in his life, he was ready to make that choice. The choice didn't make everything easy. 3 days after Christmas, Victor woke to find Lillian's side of the bed empty. She'd moved back into the master bedroom on Boxing Day, tentatively, with her own pillow and a declaration that she reserved the right to retreat to the guest room if she needed space. He'd agreed immediately, grateful for any proximity she'd allow. He found her in the studio, already dressed, staring at a blank canvas. Couldn't sleep? He asked from the doorway. Too many thoughts. She didn't turn around. I keep waiting for something to go wrong. Nothing's going wrong. Not yet. But Victor, we've been trying for barely a month. What happens when the newness wears off? When being attentive gets tedious? When you have a bad day at work and fall back into old habits? He crossed the room, standing beside her but not touching. Then you call me on it, and I try again, and we figure it out together. You make it sound simple, Trib. It's not simple, but it's also not impossible. She finally looked at him, and he saw the fear still lingering in her eyes. I'm terrified this is temporary, that I'm going to believe in us again and then wake up alone in every way that matters. Then let's make a deal. He took her hand carefully. If I'm slipping, if you see me retreating into work or ignoring you or treating you like a convenience instead of a person, tell me immediately. Don't let it build. Don't suffer in silence. Just tell me. And if telling you doesn't change anything, then we'll know this isn't working and we'll make harder decisions. But Lillian, I don't think that's going to happen. Because being present with you, learning you, it's not a burden. It's the most interesting thing I've ever done. More interesting than shipping contracts? Infinitely more interesting than shipping contracts. She almost smiled. That's a low bar. I'm discovering that most of my old priorities were low bars. They stood in the winter morning light, and Victor felt the fragility of what they were building. It wasn't solid yet, wasn't certain, but it was there. A foundation slowly forming beneath their feet. The first real test came 2 weeks into the new year. Victor received a letter from the Harrington Group, the contract that had fallen through during his Venice trip. They wanted to reconsider, but they needed an answer within 48 hours and a meeting in Manchester that would take him away for 3 days. The old Victor would have said yes without hesitation, would have left immediately, assuming Lillian would manage everything at home because that's what she'd always done. Instead, he found her in the garden with Margot, watching their daughter build a snowman. I need your advice, he said. She looked up, surprised. About what? Business. The Harrington contract, They want back in, but it means going to Manchester for 3 days, leaving right away. So go. I don't want to just go. I want to know if it's all right with you. If you need me here for anything. If 3 days feels too long right now. Lillian stood slowly, brushing snow from her skirts. You're asking my permission? I'm asking your opinion. There's a difference. She studied his face. You really mean that? I do. If you need me here, the contract can wait. Or I can try to negotiate the meeting by letter. But I won't just leave without talking to you first. Something in her expression shifted. The old you would have already been packing. The old me was an idiot. Papa's going away? Margot's voice was small, worried. Victor knelt down. Maybe. For a few days. But only if Mama says it's all right. Margot looked at Lillian. Will you be lonely? I'll have you, won't I? But will you be sad? The question was more perceptive than a 6-year-old should be. Lillian crouched beside Victor, taking Margot's mittened hands. I might miss Papa a little, but I'll be all right, and he'll come back. Promise? Margot looked at Victor. I promise. 3 days, and I'll be back. And I'll write you letters every day. You promise Mama too? Victor met Lillian's eyes. I promise. After Margot ran off to finish her snowman, Lillian touched Victor's arm. Go to Manchester. Take the contract. But Victor, all right. Every day. And I'll be back in 3 days, not 4 or 5, because something came up. How did you know I was going to say that? Because I'm learning to pay attention. Mas. He left the next morning, and true to his word, letters arrived daily. Not long business updates, but real letters. Descriptions of Manchester's sooty buildings. A terrible meal at the hotel. A funny conversation with the Harrington representatives. And questions. Always questions. How's Margot? Did she finish her snowman? What are you painting? I miss watching you work. 3 days feels longer than I expected. Lillian found herself waiting for the post each day, reading his words multiple times, writing back with equal detail. It felt like their Venice letters, 2 people learning to communicate across distance. When Victor returned on the 3rd day, exactly as promised, Margot threw herself at him. But it was Lillian's expression that made his breath catch. Relief and something warmer, something that looked like trust beginning to root. You came back, she said. I said I would, I know, but you actually did. I'll always come back. The contract was successful, bringing in nearly as much as the original would have. But what mattered more to Victor was the look on Lillian's face when he chose to spend his first evening home in the studio, just watching her paint instead of catching up on paperwork. Don't you have work? She asked. This is more important. Watching me paint? Being with you. Yes, February brought the first real argument since Lillian had moved back. It started over something small, a dinner party Mrs. Davies had scheduled without consulting Lillian. Victor had approved it months ago, back when he made all such decisions unilaterally. The invitations had already gone out. You didn't ask me, Lillian said, her voice tight. It was scheduled before everything changed. So cancel it. I can't just cancel. These are important business associates. More important than asking your wife before filling her calendar? Victor felt defensiveness rising. That's not fair. This was arranged when you weren't even living here. But I'm living here now, and you just assumed I'd play hostess without even checking if I wanted to. You've always... He stopped, hearing the trap in his own words. I've always what? Smiled and played the perfect wife? Done what was expected without complaint? Her voice rose. I'm trying to be something different now, Victor. Something real. And that means I get to say no to things I don't want to do. So you want me to cancel? I want you to have asked me first. They stood in the hallway, both breathing hard, and Victor felt the old patterns pulling at him. The urge to dismiss her concerns, to make this her problem, to retreat into work and let the issue resolve itself. Instead, he made himself stop. Breathe. Think. You're right, he said. What? You're right. I should have asked you. Should have checked your calendar, your energy, your willingness to host. I didn't, and that was wrong. Lillian stared at him like he'd grown a second head. You're agreeing with me? Yes. And I'm sorry. What do you want me to do about the dinner party? She faltered. I don't know. I wasn't expecting you to actually listen. I'm listening, so tell me, what would make this right? Wie said. She took a breath, visibly composing herself. I want to co-host. Not just smile in the corner while you talk business, but actually participate. And I want to invite people I find interesting, not just your business associates. Done. Who do you want to invite? That artist, Marcus Delane, and his wife. Victor felt a twist in his gut, jealousy and insecurity mixing uncomfortably, but he pushed past it. All right. All right? She looked suspicious. Just like that? You said he was kind to you, that you had good conversations. I'd like to meet someone who saw your value when I was too blind to. Victor, I mean it. Invite him. Invite anyone you want. Make it our party, not mine. The fight deflated suddenly, leaving them both standing in uncertain silence. Thank you, Lillian said finally. Don't thank me for doing what I should have done from the beginning. I'm going to anyway. The dinner party became something unexpected, a genuine collaboration. Lillian invited artists and writers alongside Victor's business contacts, creating a mix that forced everyone out of comfortable conversations. Marcus Delane attended with his wife, a sharp-eyed woman named Helen, who painted portraits. Victor watched Lillian bloom in conversation with them, discussing technique and theory with an expertise he'd never known she possessed. And when Marcus mentioned Lillian's talent, speaking of her work with genuine respect, Victor felt pride instead of jealousy. Your husband tells me you've set up a proper studio, sir, Marcus said to Lillian over dessert. He has. It's beautiful. I'd love to see your work sometime, if you're willing to show it. Lillian glanced at Victor, something uncertain in her expression. He nodded encouragingly. I think I'd like that, she said. Later, after the guests had left and they were cleaning up, Victor found Lillian in the studio, staring at her paintings. That went well, he said. It did. She turned to him. Marcus and Helen want to include me in a group exhibition, Young Artists, showing at a gallery in London. That's wonderful. Is it? It means being public. People seeing my work, judging it, knowing I'm your wife and wondering if the invitation is real or just social courtesy. Do you want to do it? I think so, but I'm terrified. Victor crossed to her, taking her hands. Then be terrified and do it anyway. Show them what I already know, that you're talented and brilliant and worthy of recognition that has nothing to do with me. Tears welled in her eyes. What if I fail? Then you fail, and you try again, and I'll be there either way telling anyone who'll listen that my wife is an artist and they should pay attention. She laughed through tears. You really have changed. I really have. The exhibition was scheduled for April. Lillian threw herself into preparation, painting with an intensity Victor had never seen. She worked long hours, and instead of resenting her distraction, he brought her tea and meals and sat quietly while she painted, reading or working on his own correspondence. You don't have to stay, she said one evening. I know, I want to. Why? Because watching you work is fascinating. Because I like being near you. Because this studio feels more like home than my study ever did. She set down her brush, looking at him seriously. Victor, I need to tell you something. His heart clenched. All right. I'm happy. The words came out uncertain, like she was afraid to admit them. Actually happy. Not pretending, not making do. Happy. Relief flooded through him. Good. I didn't think I could be, not here, not with you. I thought too much had broken. Maybe some things had to break before we could build properly. Maybe. She wiped paint-stained hands on her apron. But I'm still scared. That it won't last. That I'll wake up one day and you'll be gone again. Not physically, but emotionally. Back behind your walls. Then I'll need you to pull me back out. To tell me when I'm retreating. To not let me hide. That's exhausting. I know. But you won't have to do it alone. I'm watching for it too. Trying to catch myself before I slip. She moved into his arms, and he held her carefully, breathing in the scent of turpentine and paint, and something essentially her. I love you, she whispered against his chest. I love you too. No, I mean, she pulled back to look at him. I really love you. Not the idea of you, not the potential of you, the actual you. The man who watches me paint and asks about my day and fights with himself to be better. That man. I love him. Victor felt something crack open in his chest, some last defended space finally surrendering. Say it again. I love you, Victor Ashford, and it terrifies me. It terrifies me too. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, finally her mouth. But I think that's how we know it's real. March arrived with early spring. The estate began to wake from winter, crocuses pushing through frost, birds returning, light lasting longer each day. Victor found himself noticing these things in ways he never had before, seeing the world through Lillian's artist eyes. Look at that, she said one morning, pointing to sunlight through morning mist. That's Turner light. That's what I'm always trying to capture. Show me. They stood in the garden while she explained qualities of light, how it changed throughout the day, how it transformed ordinary things into something luminous. Victor listened and learned and fell more in love with the way her mind worked. The week before the exhibition, Lillian grew increasingly anxious. She second-guessed every painting, worried she wasn't ready, suggested they withdraw from the show entirely. You're ready? Victor said firmly. How do you know? Because I've watched you work. I've seen what you create. And Lillian, it's extraordinary. You're biased. I am, but I'm also right. She laughed shakily. I wish I had your confidence. Borrow mine until you find your own. Say. The exhibition opening was in a small gallery in Bloomsbury. Victor arrived early to find Lillian already there, arranging her paintings with Marcus's help. She wore green, the color of new leaves, and looked both terrified and radiant. How are you feeling? Victor asked quietly. Like I might vomit. Excellent. I read somewhere that all great artists feel that way before shows. You did not. I might have. The point is, you're going to be wonderful. People began arriving. Artists, critics, society figures curious about the mysterious Mrs. Ashford who painted. Victor watched Lillian speak about her work, saw confidence gradually replace fear as people responded with genuine interest and respect. Then Edmund Hartwell arrived. Victor felt Lillian tense beside him. Her father surveyed the gallery with his characteristic disapproval, then approached slowly. Father, Lillian said carefully, I didn't expect you. Catherine wrote to me. Said you were exhibiting. Yes. Edmund studied the nearest painting, the garden in winter, light through bare branches. You did this? I did. It's... He paused, and Victor saw something shift in the older man's expression. It's quite good, actually. Lillian blinked. Thank you. I never knew you had this in you. You never asked. The words hung between them, an echo of what Lillian had said to Victor months ago. Edmund had the grace to look uncomfortable. No, I suppose I didn't. He turned to Victor. You've encouraged this? I've tried to support it. Lillian's talent is her own. Edmund looked between them, and Victor saw him reassessing, recalculating. You've changed, Ashford. Both of you. We've had to, Lillian said quietly. The old way wasn't working. No, I suppose it wasn't. Edmund cleared his throat awkwardly. I was wrong. About many things. About what you needed from a marriage. What you deserved. Father, let me finish. He looked at his daughter with something like regret. I married you off thinking security and status were enough. That you'd adjust, be content with what society expected. I didn't consider that you might want more, might deserve more. Lillian's eyes filled with tears. I never blamed you. Perhaps you should have. He glanced at Victor. But it seems you found a way through regardless. After Edmund left, Lillian sagged against Victor. That was unexpected. He's proud of you. He's confused, trying to understand something that doesn't fit his worldview. Then we're all confused together. The exhibition was a success. Critics praised Lillian's use of light, and 3 paintings sold that first night. Victor watched his wife glow with pride and accomplishment and felt his own pride swell in response. Walking home through spring rain, Lillian slipped her hand into his. Thank you, she said. For what? For seeing me. For building me a studio. for supporting this even though it means less of my attention on the household. The household is fine. Mrs. Davies is perfectly capable. But the old you would never have said that. The old me was an idiot. We've established this." She laughed, pulling him closer. "Kiss me in the rain. We'll get soaked." "I don't care." So he kissed her there on the London street, rain pouring down around them, and felt something settle in his chest. Not the end of learning. He'd be learning her for the rest of his life. But the beginning of certainty that this was real. This was worth every difficulty. This was love. Summer arrived warm and golden. Margot turned 7 with a party Lillian and Victor planned together, inviting both her friends and the children of people they genuinely liked rather than felt obligated to. The garden bloomed spectacularly, and Lillian painted it constantly, trying to capture the quality of June light. One evening, sitting in the garden after Margot had gone to bed, Lillian turned to Victor with a question. "Do you ever miss it, the old way? When everything was simple and controlled and you didn't have to think about anyone's feelings?" He considered this honestly. "No." But I missed the illusion that I was content. It was easier to believe I had everything I needed when I wasn't paying attention to what I was missing. And now? Now I know what I almost lost. And it makes me grateful for every difficult conversation, every moment of uncertainty, every time we choose each other again. We do keep choosing, don't we? Every day. Yes. And I plan to keep choosing you for the rest of my life. She leaned against his shoulder, and they watched the sun set over the garden she'd created, and he'd finally learned to see. "I'm pregnant," she said quietly. Victor's heart stopped. "You're... what?" "Pregnant. About 3 months, the doctor thinks." "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I was afraid. Last time, with Margot, you barely noticed. You were so consumed with work that I was alone through all of it. I wasn't sure I could bear that again. And now? But now I think it might be different. But Victor, I need you present for this. Not just at the birth, but through everything. The sickness, the discomfort, the fear. I'll be there, I promise. Don't promise if you can't deliver." "I can deliver." He took her hands, turning her to face him. "I want to be there. I want to know what you're feeling every step of the way. I want to be the partner you needed the first time and deserve now." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "What if I'm difficult, emotional, demanding? Then I'll rise to meet it. Because Lillian, you're not a burden. You're my wife, and we're having another child together. And I'm not missing this. I'm not missing anything anymore. Mummies." The pregnancy was different in every way. Victor attended appointments with her, asked questions, read books about what to expect. When morning sickness left her exhausted, he brought her bland foods and sat with her. When her back ached in the later months, he rubbed it without being asked. And when she woke crying one night, terrified something was wrong with the baby, he held her and walked her through the fear until it passed. "You're really here," she said afterward. "Where else would I be? A year ago, you would have been in your study. A year ago, I was half asleep to my own life." The baby came in February, a boy they named Thomas Edmund, after Victor's friend and Lillian's father. The birth was long and frightening, and Victor stayed through all of it, holding Lillian's hand and murmuring encouragement until their son arrived screaming and perfect. "You did it," he breathed, watching her hold their child. "We did it." "No, you did the hard part. I just showed up. Just showing up is everything I needed." Margot was enchanted with her brother, insisting on helping with everything. The household adjusted to the chaos of a newborn, and Victor discovered he was better at it this time, changing nappies, walking the floor at 3 a.m, singing nonsense songs to soothe crying. "You're a natural," Lillian said, watching him with the baby. "I'm learning. There's a difference." "You're doing both." Spring came again, and then summer, and life settled into a new rhythm. Victor scaled back his business commitments, choosing to be present for dinners and bedtimes and weekend outings. Thomas grew fast, and Margot started proper schooling, and Lillian painted whenever she could steal moments between motherhood and partnership. On their 8th anniversary, the first they'd actually celebrated together, Victor took Lillian back to Venice. "You're sure?" she asked when he proposed the trip. That's a long way with 2 children at home. Catherine volunteered to take them, and I want to go back to where we started rebuilding. They stayed in the same hotel, walked the same streets, visited the same galleries. But everything felt different now. They weren't strangers learning each other, they were partners who'd fought through to something real. Standing on their balcony at sunset, watching light play on the canal, Lillian turned to him. Do you remember what you said here last time, when you were drunk? That I might be starting to love you. You were so uncertain, so afraid of what you felt. I was. And now? Now I know exactly what I feel. I love you completely. Not might. Not starting to. I love you with every confused, imperfect, still learning part of myself. She smiled, tears catching light. I love you too. The man you've become. The man you're still becoming. I'm not finished yet. Good. Neither am I. They kissed as the sun set over Venice, and Victor felt the truth of what they'd built settle in his bones. Not perfect. They still fought sometimes, still struggled with old patterns trying to reassert themselves. But real, solid, built on foundation of hard-won understanding and daily choice. When they returned to England, the estate felt like home in a way it never had before. Not because the building had changed, but because Victor finally understood what made a house into a home: presence, attention, love deliberately chosen and consistently given. Years passed. Margot grew into a bright, opinionated young woman who painted like her mother and argued like both her parents combined. Thomas became a laughing, curious boy who asked endless questions about everything. Lillian's work gained recognition, and she held regular exhibitions while Victor beamed with pride from the audience. And through it all, Victor kept learning. He learned that love wasn't a destination, but a practice. That seeing someone required constant attention, constant choice. That partnership meant sharing burdens and joys equally. He learned that his wife hummed different songs depending on her mood. Mozart when content, folk melodies when sad. That she took her tea with more honey in winter. That she painted differently when happy versus when working through something difficult. That she needed silence after parties and conversation after fights. Small things. Essential things. One autumn afternoon, 15 years after Lillian had first walked out into a November night, Victor found her in the studio. She was working on a new painting, The Garden in Autumn Light, gold and amber and impossibly alive. Beautiful, he said. She glanced back, smiling. You always say that. It's always true. Biased. Absolutely. He crossed to stand behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. But also correct. She leaned into him, and they stood watching afternoon light stream through windows, illuminating dust motes and canvas and the life they'd built from wreckage. Victor? Do you remember when I asked you to name 3 things about me, that first time when you couldn't? I remember failing spectacularly. You could do it now. I could fill notebooks now. Then tell me, 3 things. He thought, sorting through years of accumulated knowledge. You're resilient. You've forgiven me for things I'm still learning to forgive myself for, and you've rebuilt yourself into someone stronger without becoming bitter. You're generous. With Margot and Thomas. With me. Even with people who don't deserve it. And you're... He paused, searching for the right word. You're luminous. Not just in your art, but in the way you approach life. You find light in everything, and you taught me to see it too. Lillian turned in his arms, and he saw tears in her eyes. That's more than 3 things. I got carried away. Don't apologize. I like it when you get carried away. She kissed him, soft and sweet, and Victor marveled that this ordinary afternoon in a sun-filled studio was the life he got to live. Not perfect, sometimes still difficult, but real and chosen and deeply, thoroughly his. I love you, he said against her mouth. I know. You show me every day. Good, because I plan to keep showing you for the rest of our lives. Is that a promise? It's a guarantee. Later, walking through the garden as sunset turned everything golden, Victor paused by the roses Lillian had planted years ago. They'd grown wild and beautiful, blooming despite neglect and then thriving with attention. Like their marriage, he thought. Something that had nearly died from lack of care, then flourished when finally tended properly. "What are you thinking?" Lillian asked beside him. "That we've come a long way from that night when you left." "We have. I'm grateful you gave me another chance. 100 chances. More than I deserved." "We both gave chances. We both changed." She took his hand. "That's what love is, I think. Choosing to grow together instead of apart. Then I choose you, again, still, always." She smiled, and in the dying light, Victor saw everything that mattered. His wife, his partner, the woman who'd saved him by leaving and then saved him again by coming back. Not to the same broken marriage, but to something new. Something built on truth and effort and the daily miracle of really seeing each other. The house stood behind them, warm light spilling from windows. Inside, their children were laughing over dinner. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to choose each other again. But for now, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. Victor Ashford had spent 34 years building a life of control and comfort and emotional distance. Then he'd spent the last 15 learning to live differently, openly, honestly, with love as the foundation instead of the afterthought. And standing in the autumn garden with Lillian's hand in his, he knew without question which life was worth living. Not the one that looked perfect from outside, but the one that felt real from within. The one built on hard-won understanding and daily choice. The one where he finally learned to see